Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Modern Day Apocrypha, the show where we talk about shit we don't know about the week before, and hopefully we don't make a fool of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And just trying to look for other ways to explore new ideas. Today, we're talking about carnivore diet and veganism, all in the same episode. That's going to be a little bit wild, Tony.
Nick said it so nicely. I'm going to say it a little more fun. This is a cage match, bitch. Carnivores on the left, vegans on the right, and we're going to fight them against each other.
So if we can bring out our two contenders. Oh, wait, we don't have any. But that would be cool if we just had a fucking Coliseum battle right here.
Yeah. Yes, that's how it's going to go. And in the spirit of that, because we can't take a side, I did bring snacks that were neither carnivore nor vegan. So...
Uh-oh. Goodness gracious.
We got pumpkin chocolate chip cookies.
Those are some fat ass cookies.
Have you ever had these?
No.
They're like soft and they taste like
look soft.
Bread, but they're fantastic.
All right.
My cousin Donald used to work at Kroger. You remember Donald, right?
Yeah.
And one day he came home with these and was like, "You guys got to try these." And I saw him in the store today and thought they'd be perfect for the show. Yeah. See, that's what happens when you don't eat like a vegan or a carnivore. It's happiness in your mouth. All right.
Life is good. Can we just get a close up of these bad boys?
Yeah. I don't know if that's in there, but it looks
I don't
good.
either.
Yeah.
Who knows if that's in focus, but
sorry for all you audio only people. We're doing a little bit of a impromptu photo up here that's kind of funny.
That's a plump cookie.
It is a plump cookie. Check us out on YouTube, self shameless plug, to watch us eat cookies through this episode, or mini breads or whatever these are. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, I did some research this week kind of on both diets, and I thought it was fun to bring Reddit into the mix because things always get better with Reddit. At least I've found that in the past couple of few months here. And so I put a similar post on the carnivore Reddit and the vegan Reddit and was like, all right, hey, me and my buddy are doing this podcast. We like to dive into different extreme type of topics and kind of explore them. I didn't tell them we were going to pit them up against each other. I thought that they aren't ready for that. But the Reddit in the carnivore, or the post in the carnivore Reddit, not a single response. Not as promising as the vegans on Reddit, but who was going to be surprised with that? The vegans...
Well, that's a whole identity in and of itself is vegan.
Yes.
People identify as vegan.
Yes. And the vegans were quite helpful in sharing their perspective. I got a lot of responses on there.
Nice.
So we got plenty of stuff to go through. But yeah.
Tony, you just piqued my curiosity, man. Why are we waiting for the results here?
I don't know. So I guess I was kind of going back to the firsthand people experience, because that's really what I was looking for. I've eaten vegan a little bit, but it's more been vegetarian with vegan tendencies. I haven't been super strict. And I think that's partially because of the whole identity you talked about of, like, I'm all for like power to the people, like don't eat animals, animal products. Cool. I get that. But when you try to shove it down other people's throats, it's hard to convert people. And so as I've seen that, even before I even got here, I was very much, I don't want to be that guy. Right. So, I wanted to get that firsthand people experience, right? And I haven't eaten either of these fully, so I needed to get results from other rando people because we can get facts on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I am certainly not qualified to speak about carnivorism or veganism because I've never subscribed to either diet. I mean, I've had, obviously, like, carnivorous food. I've also had some vegan food that was just fucking delicious. And I've also had some vegan food that was not fucking delicious. So, yeah, it's definitely like you got to kind of like figure out what you like. And that's everything that I've read about veganism. It takes a little bit to get used to, or not so much get used to, but learn about so that you know what it is that you enjoy about it. But Tony, going back to your point about like, it's like this movement where people try to push it down your throat. And I'll be honest, it kind of feels that way, but I've never had anybody like really approach me head on and like try to get me to become a vegan. But I will say that of all the different diets veganism seems to be the only one, or maybe even vegetarianism, that is ethically based. Like everything else is more about like the health, the fitness, the well-being. Veganism is the ethics of animal cruelty, and that's something that I think just about everybody can get behind and have that resonate with us. And so from that standpoint, I think that's why people who are vegans might kind of try to push their influence more than anybody else in this sphere, because
Makes sense.
they've got like a reason to want other people to behave the way that they do.
Because it's not just about like, well, fuck you, eat what you want. I'm eating what I want. There's this other element to it. It's not just about health and fitness internally. There's external factors involved.
Right.
That's a really good observation. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but I don't think a lot of people catch that.
Well, yeah, and I hadn't thought about it in that way until you had kind of said that vegans seem to put that in your face. And sometimes it's in like a blatant manner, but almost always, from my experience, it's just kind of like a general conversation, and that's cool.
I'm going to shame you for eating the kittens. You know what I mean? Like, that's the vibe that I usually get. And I'm like, not subtle much.
So I project that vibe on vegans when I'm talking to them. But if I'm being honest,
in person, they're all fine. But like, I'm talking about the responses I got from Reddit. It was amazing.
It's toxic.
Yeah.
So what are these posts that you put up there?
Let's see here. So they did give us an idea for a potential future episode, but I'll read this quote from one user. It said, "Eating rice and beans."
Hang on. What was the post itself that you had put up?
So the post I had put up was basically saying that we talk about all sorts of random shit, mostly in kind of the extreme or taboo category, stuff that we don't know about. We go do research for a week and then come back and talk about it. I wanted to know their experience on how long they had been, or what their intention was, or what their goal was with the diet, what the results were, and how long they had been on it, and why they had. So basically, why they had started, what brought them to it, and then so on and so forth. And carnivores were just happy to quietly eat meat, and the vegans gave me some good stuff. So it's not all like, let's make fun of vegans, because I'm mostly there myself. So, and just for anyone who doesn't know, what the vegan diet means is like no meat, dairy, eggs, or any animal products of any kind. So, and there's different layers of that, of how vegan you want to be. Sometimes it's just no meat, dairy, or eggs, but some people get there's this tiny little thing that comes from an animal product and they won't eat that stuff too.
Sure, like it might be like oil or something that came from,
like fish oil caps and stuff like that, like anything. Some people won't even like wear leather, which now goes into more than a diet. But again, it all comes from that same space.
Yeah, so it's like, that's a good point. Vegan can kind of be a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to think about it from that perspective. It's definitely different than all the other diets that I traditionally think of.
Well, you have some people who are hardcore into any diet, and they'll sell you on it's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So I think there's just more opportunities for vegan to be a lifestyle beyond a diet versus any of these other things that we've talked about. But one of these quotes was, "Eating rice and beans is a lot less extreme than anything that goes on in a slaughterhouse. You want extreme? Look into animal agriculture gag laws and the illegal cruelty they're trying to protect." And that was one of the more tame comments. And I was like, oh shit, okay, well, let's look into illegal cruelty and agriculture gag laws. Yeah, fuck it. Maybe we'll catch that on an episode.
What is an agriculture gag law?
So I think the idea is, I didn't look into it. I was like, oh, it's clickbaity. I didn't click, but I think the idea is it's basically, and this goes down our easy to walk conspiracy path that we walk on this podcast sometimes. Basically, the idea I'm gathering is that there's laws put in place that they don't talk about or don't release the shit that they do. I guess that's what I'm reading that they're alluding towards. Whether it's true or not, who fucking knows? It's Reddit. It's probably true.
Right. Hey, they just made stock market stuff actually happen. That was real.
Yeah, Reddit is like Wikipedia with hot sauce.
I like that description.
Yeah, that's fresh right now.
Yeah, I think that'll resonate with people. Anybody who just lost $1 billion on GameStop or AMC. Yeah, there's a lot of hot sauce. It's like some Carolina Reapers in there or something.
Oof, yeah, and they ain't done yet, bro.
I know.
Those memes are great. But going on with some of these other comments, more of the kind of straightforward what I was looking for was the results were better energy, easier weight loss, which when I stopped eating meat, it was really easy to lose weight as well. And then lower carbon footprint too, which I don't know. There's back and forth on that. Some people say that it doesn't take more carbon footprint to raise beef and cattle and all that. And some people say it does, but at least from this person's perspective, that's their intention and their results that they're getting from it.
Yeah, I had heard a lot on that, and it seems like there's a lot of controversy around that. And I don't know, like this is where the nutrition stuff gets so complex. And we talked about that in the, I don't know what to call it, the root episode of this little mini series that we're doing here, talking about diets and nutrition. But there's so much contradictory evidence, and I can't help but think that a lot of that's probably due to the lobbyism that's going on. Like if you're not Purdue Pharma, isn't Purdue like a chicken company?
Yeah.
Did I just make that up?
You did, but then you added pharma to it and it got weird.
Okay, so scratch the pharma, normal Purdue. Maybe I'll use Tyson as a better example because that's not to be confused, unless your name is Mike.
Hey.
And
guys, let's talk about meat and not meat today.
It was even better with the cookie in your mouth. But yeah, so like if you're Tyson, you don't want all of these regulations and things, and you don't want people to be taxing you for, I mean, they're really in the business of chicken predominantly, right. And I think the greenhouse gases and the carbon footprint is really more associated with cattle. But the bottom line is that you don't want these regulations because that cuts onto your profits. You have to have bigger factories or bigger pastures to raise these animals, and that cost adds up quickly.
Well, and if you look at any business and they're used to X amount of growth, X amount of revenue, and then, and in this case, allegedly, right, they have all these chickens crammed into these tiny little spaces. They can't move around, but they're growing and pumping out eggs, whatever. And then someone comes along who has a different perspective and says, you know what, that's a really shitty way to treat those animals. Let's let them walk around and have some space. Okay, so they go and make some weird loophole that they can have basically the version of the same thing. But look, now they're free range guys because we have 2 feet of space, but
2 square feet and access to the sky. So it's like,
yeah.
So they're like in a fireplace.
Right. And to make up for it, let's pump them full of all these extra, and I know I'm jumping into the next one we're going to do about GMO stuff, but now that you've got Hulk-sized chickens that are so beefed up and grown so fast they can't even walk, that was just another problem fixing the bad problem they were trying to solve for.
Right. And so what it really boils down to is that today's mainstream food production that is more focused on the masses,
yeah,
unfortunately recognizes the animal's objective needs, but doesn't recognize its subjective needs. We know that animals have to have, not all in the same capacity, but when you take a pig or a calf from a cow and separate it from its mother immediately, like there's some actual trauma that happens, and you can go look at some of the research that's been done there. And that's an example of we're taking care of their objective needs. We're giving them food. We're giving them the nutrients that they need. Beyond that, that's pretty much where it stops. And that's a really terrible life for any organism.
Right.
That's conscious of in any capacity.
Well, and I think that's where the bigger question goes into play, because some people don't care because they don't have a consciousness. They're less than us. Or at least that's might be the perspective. And then other people will go, man, we have our dogs and our cats. Well, we don't eat those. Well, but look at the difference of how you treat them. if we, and some people do, and again, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just laying out the perspective. Some people do have pigs as pets.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest bacon fan, but I'm not a pig pet fan
It'd
either.
be tastier than it would be a pet.
I think so. That's kind of where I'm headed.
Little side story. I went over to a friend's house of mine years ago, and he had a pet pig. It's a Vietnamese potbelly pig, and I don't even remember its name. And he was friendly, but if he saw your shins, he would charge at them.
Ooh.
And so, like, not when you're just standing there. It's like when you're sitting on a couch. So here I am. I don't know this at the time. I'm just minding my own damn business in the living room. And the pig, he was an indoor pig. He was actually pretty badass. But he comes just like lumbering through the doorway and then like spies my shins out of the corner of his eye and immediately turns like on a dime and beelines it at me like full on charges. And so I pick my leg up and he smashes into the couch and then just turned around and just left like as if nothing happened. And I was like, what was that?
Oh my goodness, dude.
But he was friendly. Like you could pet him and like just hang out with him.
But something shifted in the back of his brain, like to attack mode. Shins, get it now.
Seize the moment.
I love it.
It's so wild.
I hear arguments in both sides of my head for this is why we need to keep eating meat, because pigs will turn into attack dogs. And also, this is why we need to stop eating pigs so they can have room to bite your shins.
Yeah. I think that's the approach that people are taking out there. Absolutely.
Good. Just checking. I really liked the next comment that we got on here was a really long post from somebody who used to work on a slaughter line. And their big thing was kind of about animal rights. And they explained to me kind of with some details that I'll share here in a minute of some of that carbon footprint. So not so much more of the gases, but more of the water standpoint. And again, this is from Reddit, but seemed like a credible source from someone who is in that industry and
have some firsthand experience.
Exactly. And is now doing the farming, non-animal farming to give the back end of the data that I'll give here. But breeding animals for consumption takes a lot more resources than growing fruits and veggies. So it's like 1,500 to 2,200 gallons of water for 1 pound of beef. It's kind of a lot of water. Yeah. Especially when you put it in comparison to 26 gallons of water for 1 pound of tomatoes.
26 gallons for 1 pound of tomatoes.
Right. And so I know those numbers are pretty vast, and you have to think about the density of the food there. And, 1 pound of beef versus 1 pound of tomatoes, you're probably going to get a lot bit more fuel comparing those two, but it's not going to be equally proportionate in the water cost of it.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm just looking this up here. So 1 pound of beef has just over 1,100 calories, and calories in tomatoes per pound, it was 1,137 calories for beef, and it's 81 calories per pound of tomatoes. So it would take somewhere in the ballpark of 15 times the amount. And I'm sorry, what were the numbers for water?
1,500 to 2,200, and then 26
gallons. Yeah, so there's not even close to a direct comparison there. Like the tomatoes, and calories aren't everything.
Right.
But when you compare water per calorie, it's no brainer there with tomatoes.
Yeah. Rice might have been an easier one, but he didn't give me that, or she, whoever it was. And then the other thing following that up was some places in the U.S. have water shortages, but they're still growing meat. And when you look at that comparison, okay, maybe in some of these places, and it might be sustainable, and I can hear your argument.
Yeah, so so I guess to that standpoint, it's very regional then. But if that's the case, how are they? Okay, so I'm thinking about places that might be arid. Obviously, the desert, but I don't think that you're really raising livestock in the desert. So the next best place that comes to my mind is Texas, where it's pretty arid, but it's not a desert, you know, and so that's where like you get your Texas Longhorns and stuff. So I would imagine that it is probably difficult to keep the supply of water out there, but perhaps that's the best place to grow protein for some other reason. I just don't know it.
Yeah.
Because you need like that free range open pastures, especially if you want to treat animals better.
Right.
You can't cram them into these spaces.
Exactly. Oh, someone else said, oh no, the same guy. I didn't look into this. I should have, but I just wrote down the fact. World Health Organization classified red meat and processed meat as a class 1 carcinogen. I don't know if that's true or not. I should have looked that one up before I just spit it, but this was all that same guys who gave all the stuff. But on their personal, since they switched over to a vegan diet, improved type 1 diabetes, improved joint inflammation and pain, all just with a diet change.
Yeah, so that's so I think that's a good spot to kind of park for a second.
Yeah.
So I've heard a couple things. You talked about joint issues, and I've heard the same argument be made about all meat diets, that all meat diets help with rheumatoid arthritis and things of that nature.
I got some of that data when we get to the carnivore stuff too.
Okay, so I'm curious to get into that. Now, the difference though is that the carnivore diet is much less scientifically dissected than a vegan diet is. So just on the grounds of available information, it seems like if there's some type of tie there, you almost have to side with the vegan diet maybe being less inflammatory just due to the amount of data that's gone into it. But still, that's not like a scientific conclusion by any means. So you can't just say the jury's out on that conversation.
Yeah, I think
interesting.
I think it goes into the whole gut biome. And that's the new convo that everyone's trying to figure out and understand. And I think maybe what it is that when you eat such a specific group of something, it allows whatever you are feeding and those bacteria in your gut that have way more, at least they're finding out that it has way more reaching impact than we thought it did. Mm-hmm. That when you cut off all those extra ones that were giving you problems and you just allow the good ones to grow, oh my God, this fixed it. When really you might not have needed such an extreme swing to one all meat or no meat. Maybe it was in the process you cut out all this processed bullshit that we eat a lot of.
Right.
And that's what was really fucking you up. But you had a framework to stick to, and that helped you stay away as we're eating the processed bullshit.
Right. It's some delicious processed bullshit,
So
though.
good.
Let's be honest. Another one that you mentioned at the very start of this when you were talking about the Reddit responses was weight loss. Mm-hmm. And it totally makes sense on paper for veganism because you're not, I mean, like plants just don't have a lot of fat content.
Right.
That's not necessarily true to say because you've got nuts and avocados and things like that.
But they don't have the density of it in meat or in our deep fried meat culture.
Especially that, yes. What I was surprised to learn is that the carnivore diet is very often, almost always associated with weight loss. Mm-hmm. And that I found interesting because it kind of like I raised my eyebrows like, how does that work? And the theory here is that protein is a more fulfilling nutrient. And so if you eat a steak or it could even be something lean like a piece of chicken, then you feel satiated for an extended amount of time. And just from my personal experience, if I eat salad that I just, go outside and pick and make a salad, and I've tried doing that for like a couple days and stuff, and I am not satisfied at all.
Right.
And then there's an argument to be made that, it takes some time for your stomach to shrink and get used to that. But the fact from my experience is that without meat or without like a pasta or some type of carbohydrate would be an alternative, it's not fulfilling. And so I'm ending up having to like snack if I'm only eating vegetables and fruits and things. And so that seems to be where the weight loss comes from with the carnivore diet, is that you eat your chicken and you do that at 12 p.m. and then you're good until 5 or 6 when it's dinner time.
And I kind of just pulled this together now in my mind, and I could be wrong. Is the carnivore diet like a form of a keto diet?
Yeah, so you can enter ketosis from carnivore diet, but not always. It depends on how fatty your foods are.
Okay. Because the thought in my mind because I did keto for 6 months or a year, a few years back. Weight loss, super easy. Because you just trick your body into burning off all the fat. Who knew? As soon as I got off it, I got it back, which, that's how these diets work. But
yeah, so
it just made me think.
Keto's high fat, moderate protein, and no carbs.
Pretty much no carb, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's where it comes into it with carnivore diet. If you ate a lot of like ribeye steaks, which are just kind of a fattier cut of steak, then you would probably enter ketosis because you're having a large fat intake.
Well, and I think, too, there's versions from what I was seeing of the carnivore diet where some people eat just meat. Mm-hmm. Like, I eat beef, lamb, and salt was one quote I heard. Well, damn, that's
not even eggs.
Boring as hell.
Yeah.
Other people will add in eggs. Other people will have in dairy. Some people, there's similar to the whole vegan needle.
Right.
There's fluctuation on where you land, but still being in the category.
Interesting. So yeah, I find it interesting. If you're kind of pitting these two up against each other, which isn't fair, to be honest.
I know, it's just fun.
We can't. Yeah, it is. But there's not like a way to go about this conversation and say like one's better than the other. But I do find it interesting that you can achieve a lot of the benefits from either diet.
Right. It's just the consistency of sticking to a path, which is kind of an interesting. If we want to get philosophical for a second, it's almost like an interesting life lesson. Stick to something, and if you just dabble, you're not going to see really good, crazy results because you've not pushed forward in just one direction.
Well, that's another thing is like, because with that mindset, that's the way that I interpreted it was you can't have a balanced diet and achieve healthy results. And my personal thought is that a balanced diet is probably best, but I don't know that for sure.
But what is balanced? Because, you go back to our, fucked up little food pyramid and the food pyramid, that was the slogan, was a balanced diet. So maybe balanced diet was just propaganda and brainwash to eat the food pyramid.
Yeah.
And we all know that's fucked up. So
absolutely.
What is balanced?
Right. Yeah. I don't think that, how do you put definition on this? Like who's the authority here? That's the problem that I find in this. And so like when you quoted the World Health Organization talking about meat as a carcinogen, my mind immediately went to our USDA that said, here's a healthy balanced diet and called it the food pyramid. And that was a load of shit. Compared to today's knowledge, maybe it is the best way to go. Maybe the food pyramid's right and everything that we're doing now is wrong.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, who's the authority on something? And the last couple of years has proved to me again and again, it's not the government. We look at years ago, guys, cigarettes are great for you. And I think we said that in the last episode. And now we're like, yeah, that'll fuck up your lungs. But you just said it was healthy for me to have.
Yeah. So with the track record.
Yep.
And then the lobbyism that happens. Right. It's just, this is the biggest theme that I've taken away from our entire podcast is it's up to us as individuals to educate ourselves on what's best.
And a lot of that for me, like how I do it, it's someone asked me when I was out there, I was hanging out with them the other day. I'm like, dude, do you just eloquently say everything to questions I ask? I don't know. I was like, nah, dude, here's what I do. I'll go get the framework for it, like read a textbook, find a website, something, and get the skeleton of it. And then I'll go read firsthand people experience. Thank you, Reddit. Or other social media stuff like that, whatever. That puts the muscle on it. And then I'll go get my own firsthand experience, and that puts the skin on it. So that way I get a full in and out. I really know what the fuck this thing is. You've called me out before on, oh, you tried this? Yep, balls to the wall. Let's go figure it out.
100%.
That's kind of my process for it. And I think that's almost the only way I've figured out to really feel like I know something is let me read the book. Let me see if what other people who've read the book and tried it, see if it checks out. Okay, let me test it for myself. that takes a lot of fucking time. You can't do that with everything. So you got to try to pick your battles and wade through it. But I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility, self-responsibility for us. So, Tony, we've gone through some of your vegan responses. Are there any more that stood out to you?
I mean, there's more, but let's switch on over to the carnivore ones. And they weren't Reddit responses, but this was just... so I've got one friend who's been eating carnivore for a while. I don't have a time frame, but she shared a bunch of stuff with me that kind of led me down some paths to find some more firsthand experiences, and then gave me her firsthand experience too. So for her, eating carnivore helped her to realize and overcome that she'd had a food addiction. And so
I've heard that.
Yeah. And it makes sense, especially, think about 2020 sitting at home all the time. You can't get out. Well, I'm sad, or I'm bored, or I want to feel good. And there's all this stress of what the fuck about the virus, and then elections and protests. Well, I get dopamine when I eat. Let me do a little bit of that. And so it's an addiction to the dopamine, and how you figured to trigger that. It's not through a substance, it's through food. When you're eating way more than you need, you put on a ton of weight. That extra weight then weighs on your mental mood and all that, and it's just a vicious cycle. So carnivore, all of her cravings and everything go away when she's on the diet strictly, which I thought was super cool.
And do you think that comes back to eating chicken is more fulfilling than...
No, because there's been times with myself when I try to cut out sugar, and it doesn't matter what it is. I just need sugar because there's that addictive aspect of it. From what I'm understanding for her, when she's on the diet specifically, that addiction, that need to go get other types of foods goes away. That psychological aspect of it, which I think, if I'm understanding right, comes from the gut biome triggering stuff. Could be wrong, but I think that's what I'm hearing in some of these books and stuff that I've been into.
Interesting. That's cool.
The quote that she said was, "I'm satiated, have no digestive issues, steady energy, great sleep, and weight loss is easy."
There it is again, steady energy. And we hear that with veganism as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are there so many... It's interesting if you pit these two diets against each other.
Right.
You're finding examples of individuals saying the exact same benefits for both diets. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I've got a coworker who has been vegan for a while, and she says, yeah, I got to keep my vegan superpowers.
Nice.
Because it's just so different when she sticks to the diet. She feels, and her whole perspective is totally different.
Has she ever tried carnivore?
I don't think so.
I'd be curious to find somebody who's done both.
Yeah, I don't know. It's cool to see people having success in a space that they found out, because as you and I both know, going through all these topics, that shit's fucking hard to find. Finding your center and a rounded life experience, shit's fucking hard.
Yeah.
So good for these people finding it. It's just weird to have them find the same result through different pathways, through opposing pathways.
Yeah, drastically different. What else did this person respond with?
So they said there was a little bit of a downside for them, lack of variety when you're just eating meat, and think about no sauces. So it's just the meat and maybe salt and pepper and butter. Now, steak sounds great, but my uncle used to travel around installing light fixtures for Home Depot in new stores, swapping them out. And the company would give them a crazy good per diem. And so they would go eat lobster and steak every night. But he said after 6 months of eating lobster and steak, he wanted to come home and have, grandma's cheesy hash browns.
Yeah. Oh, I believe that.
That good home cooked, because it's supply and demand.
From a happiness standpoint, I don't think either diet sounds appealing.
Really?
Veganism seems like, first of all, I like meat a lot. So
yeah, you do.
And I think I'd be I could give it up if I had some compelling reason to.
Sure.
I haven't found that reason yet. But just excluding that feels like I'm missing out on what I enjoy the most out of a meal. On the other hand, I definitely couldn't do carnivore diet. Like, there's just no way, because I eat so many nuts and like I really like fruits and vegetables.
Well, you can still eat meat and eat nuts.
So my understanding is that like a traditional carnivore diet is...
You missed it, Nick. It's okay. Move on.
Oh. All right. I've been roasted. I like my nuts.
It's all good. I'll go back to what my friend was telling me. Lack of variety, and for her, going back to that whole food addiction thing, it's hard to have social understanding or to be socially acceptable, to be a carnivore or to eat that way when people don't understand they need to abstain from certain foods because of that food addiction, similar to how other people need to abstain from like alcohol or substances, because it's that level of a hook for this individual.
Meaning she would get back into eating too much junk food and stuff.
Correct. So staying super strict is like eating carnivore is like staying in AA.
So taking that back to the concept that you had talked about earlier with your gut biome, it's suggesting that for her, in her subjective case, eating only meat helped keep her gut bacteria in check such that she didn't have the cravings for candy and desserts and stuff. Now, granted, there are some assumptions made in that statement. Like, does your gut biome actually impact your craving for sweets? And it seems that it can. I've heard the saying that, maybe I heard it from you over the course of the past few months.
Well, and there's like maybe 60,000, that number's off, but it's a lot, different types of bacteria, and it's getting the right percentages and combinations of these bacteria to hit that sweet spot, whatever the fuck it is. And so when you constantly feeding just one type of, especially this bad shit like sugar, that specific bacteria that feeds off sugar grows and grows and grows and grows, and then you can't even process the good for you stuff like good veggies or good meat,
because those bacteria help you digest
right
the food that's coming in
and get it to a spot where you can absorb those nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't have enough people to actually break this down. We're just going to push this right on through. So that's why it takes a while to kind of get used to those cravings after you eat and eliminate some of these highly addictive things like sugar. You will actually crave veggies or just meat because the biome that you've now built for yourself wants more of that specific fuel.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how both diets are succeeding, because both are creating colonies of bacteria in your gut that have a certain type of diet themselves that they want, and that influences your behavior in what foods you select. Because if you've trained your gut bacteria to want the fibrous fruits and vegetables or whatever it is that they're feeding off of,
Yeah.
then that becomes your prominent diet, and then vice versa for carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking fascinating.
At least
it makes sense.
That's what makes sense to me.
And it makes sense based off of the results that we're hearing from the individuals. Weight loss, better energy. Like, it just kind of adds up.
Mm-hmm.
I named 2. Is that a powerful argument?
I mean, better energy and weight loss, there's whole fucking industries around those two things.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big enough statement.
Yep.
And you don't need to pound monsters. Hey.
Right. Did this person mention any of like her vitamin deficiencies? So one thing that I learned was that people who go on the carnivore diet tend to have vitamin deficiencies with vitamin C and vitamin E. And I don't know much about vitamin E, but vitamin C is what, or a lack thereof, is what causes scurvy. So you think about like pirates back in
Yeah.
the exploration days, and they weren't getting fruits, specifically citrus fruits. And so if you keep oranges and lemons and stuff, then you get a good vitamin C intake. What I had read that was kind of diving into this, because somebody was making the point that, well, that can't be true because there are all of these indigenous tribes that live almost or actually exclusively on meat. And the example that somebody cited was the Inuit tribe up in Canada, living in the Arctic. And it turns out that, yes, they are pretty much on the carnivore diet, eating seals and, I don't know, fucking polar bears and shit. Santa elves if they can get them.
As long as it's not bats, we're golden.
Yeah. Oh my god. Those Wuhan idiots. Oh man, that was good stuff.
Scurvy.
But what it turns out is that they also eat whale skin, and whale skin is very high in vitamin C.
Is that like pork rinds?
Dude, I don't know.
Okay, that's just where my mind went. We got whale skin, pork rinds, same thing.
All I think is barnacles. Like, doesn't that just sound...
Chewing on... You know how, like, people chew on sunflower seeds and spit out the shells?
Oh, no.
Dad, let's play baseball and chew on some barnacles.
No. Oh.
We're making so many assumptions in this episode. It's great.
Dude, but I think this is also the culture, or at least in Iceland, which I know is not the Inuit tribe, but they have something where they ferment shark or fish. They bury the fucker in a hole and leave it there for I don't know how long, too long, until it ferments. And then they eat it. Like,
and not the fun kind of fermentation, like alcohol or kimchi.
Well, I think all fermentation turns into alcohol, right?
True, but you're burying it and letting it rot. Like, there's a difference between fermentation is cool and it makes fun things. Nah, let's let go rot for a while. And then let's dig it back up and eat it.
What a delicacy, baby.
Oh, that's grody.
You do what you got to do to survive, man.
Whew. Did we... Oh, yeah. Whale skin. That's how we got here. Vitamin C, scurvy stuff. No,
Yeah.
She didn't mention that at all in what she had given me.
And that would take some extensive testing from a nutritionist or a doctor, or whoever can tell you what your vitamin C levels are.
Well, and that I think it would also take time, too.
Yeah.
And so I know depending on how extreme you go on the vegan diet, concern there is vitamin B12 deficiency.
Which is directly related to energy.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
And so there's different ways. Like I know nutritional yeast is one way that they typically it's a natural source of non-animal B12 source.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be like pointing fingers and like
fire away,
drawing lines in the sand here, but yeast are animals.
I guess yeast would be more bacteria, but living organism. But if you're going to that far, I can't even eat plants then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that is, that's a good thought. I like that.
I'm not trying to like make contradictions or anything, but
no, but it's interesting because it says, where's the line on what is life not okay to eat? Because everything else, literally we need to consume life to keep eating in some form or another, or to keep living rather. But they've made a line at like, these ones are not okay to do. And is it the fact that they can get up and move? Because plants and veggies can't get up and move.
Well, okay, so let's kind of dive down that. So I don't think that there's any right answer that we're going to come to here.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a right answer that anybody could come to. But if you think about what we talked about earlier with veganism being a lot of it's ethics based.
Right.
Then you have to think like, what is it that makes people feel ethically immoral from eating animals? And I think this is going to be something that's very subjective to each individual. And I am pretty far from it, considering that I hunted last year.
Right.
But I'll say what my thoughts are. Like, when you look at an animal, it's looking back at you, and it's almost like you make it humanized. And you sense something in that being that makes it feel like they are worthy is the word that I want to say, but that's probably not the best word to use. But it's like some form of respect that you get when you know that this other animal is alive and conscious and aware, maybe not self-conscious, but it's conscious.
Right.
And it can probably feel pain and things of that nature.
And it has the ability to make a choice.
Right.
Even if that choice is just to follow its own biological
survive.
programming.
Now, if we go to the yeast example, maybe I'm speaking on behalf of vegans, and that's obviously just not fair. But if I put myself in a vegan's shoes, I think I don't have that feeling of attachment and that feeling of harm and immorality that comes from killing something like yeast, because you don't see it, you don't even know that you're doing it unless you consciously just think about the fact that there's yeast in my bread or whatever your yeast is in. Maybe you're enjoying a good 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗲𝗰𝘁. And
Save the yeast pets, and I got, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense.
so then at that point, we're on the verge of bacteria.
Yeah.
And if you're eating plants, you're eating bacteria. There are bacteria on those plants. So why are we okay with that?
Right.
And this isn't trying to like point fingers and make veganism not okay at all. Like, I think it's a lifestyle that people get a lot of good value out of. But when you put things to extremes, you can see that sometimes there's a line that has to be drawn, and that line can be arbitrary.
I like that.
I think we could find ourselves in 100 years recognizing that plants have some sense of consciousness. If you look at how plants grow, they stop growing on sides of the plant that are away from light, and they start growing towards light sources. You've heard studies about where plants are spoken to kindly with like positive words, and they flourish and grow so much. And if they, for example, listen to death metal, if somebody plays death metal at them or like cusses them out and stuff, they don't flourish. And there are scientific studies about that. And so, I don't know, can you say that plants have a consciousness too? And when you go and you're cutting leaves off of them, are they having, they have stress. They get stressed when you go and cut them. Why?
But does it feel the same for them as it does for us getting our arm cut off? I think that's what the question you're trying to get at. Like, is it the same?
Well, it could be. It could not be, because I don't think that the feeling of immorality from like consuming animals is always derived from the pain that they might endure.
Okay.
Like, although it's violent, the way that people dispatch animals, or at least that I've seen them do it, is like with like it's not like an actual gun, but it's kind of the same function as a gun.
Like a bolt into the forehead?
Yeah, a bolt into the head. And I don't know, that's probably close to painless. Maybe not initially. Like, there's a point where like your brain circuits have to stop firing. But if that happens in 2 seconds, I don't know. If you cut a plant, maybe it doesn't ever say ow or try to move away from you and be like, shit, you know? But it definitely gets stressed. You can't cut too much off of plants all at once.
Right. This is fucking wild. How we got here, like talking about this. I think the whole, like how the whole ecosystem works in the world is that you've got that small bacteria and something a little bit bigger eats it, and then so on and so forth. When you take one of those things out, shit gets wild. So you see it in some of these stuff like on, you know, National Geographic, where they'll either introduce something in an area that's not supposed to be there and it fucks up the hierarchy of things, or
You've heard about kudzu out here in the south?
something will get poached and it's no longer there either as its food source as itself or as a predator to keep stuff in
What do you mean
check.
something will get poached?
So let's say the lions get poached.
Oh, like literally like poachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, hunted.
And then there's not enough lions to take care of the gazelle population, and then the gazelle are way too, yeah.
the wolves in Yellowstone.
Exactly.
Everybody's heard that.
Yeah.
Which I've also heard isn't true, but I don't know. Like I've heard so much about it, and then I've read 2 or 3 things that said that was a myth. So I don't know.
Bro, nothing's real anymore. We're just talking about shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's something else that came to my mind on the topic of plants, and unfortunately it just slipped my mind. But I think the way that this is where I said that I personally haven't been able to find any compelling reason for me to go vegan.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, because one time you and I were talking, and you had made a good point, which is that you just don't have to eat animals anymore to survive. If you had said that you wanted to be vegan in 1600, you probably would have just died.
Right.
Like when it comes down to it. And so I think that's why, like, building our case off of, like the paleo diet says, this is what we evolved to eat. And that might be something that's healthy, and there might be some validity there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right way to eat. And if you are completely against, like, killing animals to get nutrients, which is just a natural part of life in general, outside of humanity or within humanity, then veganism is a very viable option in today's world. And I think that's really cool that you can make that choice, and that's something that you can elect to do. I think from my perspective, why I haven't found a way to move into that goes into, like, plants have actually evolved to not have to consume living things. They consume sunlight, and they turn that into sugars, and those sugars are what keep them going. There's no way around that for people. We can't do that. We don't have chlorophyll. We don't have chloroplasts. We aren't like those cool bacteria that have their own, they use like bioluminescence and grow bacteria within, what is it? Oh man, maybe it's something like related to plankton or something like that. But
so you're telling me I can't call up Elon and get a bioluminescent tattoo and stop eating?
Right. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way for people. So I think this is where it kind of comes down to, is like you have to draw the line, because people are always, not always, probably, but at least for the immediate future, going to have to consume living organisms in order to sustain themselves. And so it's like, where do you draw the line? I don't know why you draw it at animals and not on plants. Maybe it's pain related. Maybe we don't know enough about plants either, and maybe they feel pain. I just don't know.
And by that time, we'll be able to just photosynthesize what we need, and
wouldn't that be dope?
We'll be cyborgs, but it'll be okay.
Yeah, so I just don't know what to make of that. Like,
yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, because I've heard that argument before, but it's been sarcastic, like, oh, save the plants and eat meat. It's just people from the other side of the aisle poking fun. But to have a conscious thought about it and say, why is this line here? And I'm sure someone could share their specific experience, but I think, like you said earlier, it's all going to be subjective. It's not going to be a resounding answer why.
Right. Yeah. And guys, I'm as anti, probably not as anti as anybody could be about, like, eating your Tyson chickens that are factory raised, because I eat crap like that from time to time, but I really try to make a conscious effort not to. I think that's pretty disgusting that that's how the industry has become. On the other hand, people are getting cheap food, and that, we want to talk about world hunger. Maybe there's some value there. Like, there's a trade-off, right? But yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to subjective reasons. And I'd really like to hear and, like, I'm trying to put myself in a mindset of, like, how a vegan might respond to my thoughts on that. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Like, I've dabbled in that realm, but I've not super committed, so I don't feel like I can justify an accurate response on there.
Sure.
One more thing I wanted to catch before we wrap up. Are you familiar with 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁
Yeah, Jordan Peterson's daughter.
Yeah. So I watched like a 20-minute video of her talking about her experience with the carnivore diet. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, but when you look at the carnivore diet, for some reason, she seems to just be the shining example of the carnivore diet. And so this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
Limited exposure to this. It seems like they're just cherry picking somebody to represent carnivore diet. That's totally biased just because of my limited exposure to it.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
But that might also be because it's also kind of new, or at least in the spotlight new. And so
True.
That first person who has an easy platform because, you know,
Her father.
dad has a voice and all I had to do was send one tweet once and instant platform of your own. That's probably why that front runner aspect is there.
So what was in this video? Like, I know about her situation. She has some type of autoimmune disease. Was it arthritis related? Or?
So she was diagnosed with arthritis at age 2.
Yeah.
And then had a bunch of different drugs throughout childhood, which what I'm reading on the gut biome stuff, when you have all these antibiotics and stuff, especially at young age, when this stuff is trying to build and develop, all that gets fucked.
I mean, what do antibiotics do? They kill bacteria.
And we just didn't understand at the time when we would lean so heavily on antibiotics that we have, you know, thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of different good bacteria that need a delicate balance. And when we have these antibiotics, it fucks that. Now, I'm not saying like don't take antibiotics, just there's a big, you know, fallback or downside to it that we weren't always aware of. But lots of different drugs. She had depression and OCD at age 9. Like, shit. Can you imagine being depressed, like clinically depressed at age 9? Like, fuck, dude.
Okay, hold on. I'm sure this is not the right way to think about it.
No, because I know where you're going, and you're damn right for pointing it out.
Her father is a psychologist, and so, like, if you're in that family, you're gonna get diagnosed more than any other 9-year-old that doesn't have a psychologist in the family.
That's probably fair.
But that's, I'm sorry, that was like kind of insensitive, and I don't mean it that way.
No, but
I'm just trying to think about like,
let's get the full picture.
Yeah.
Let's get all the perspectives.
yeah, I guess
right?
that's what I'm going for.
That's good. Because it's easy for me to go down this thing and retell a story as a slogan, and people go, "Oh my god," and just see the one perspective. So this is healthy balance. Had a hip and ankle replacement at age 17. Like,
That's rough.
yeah.
And think about what that does. Obviously, there's some justification there for depression. Like, if you're a child and that's when she got it replaced, that's not when it started affecting her. So
Right.
if you're 9 years old, for example, and your friends are playing basketball, or they lived in Canada, so hockey.
Curling, bro.
Curling, yeah, maybe she's out there curling or something cool. Yeah, I can understand how that would cause some issues with your social life and just your general well-being.
Yeah. Interesting. Her prior diet was they tried to eat what they thought was good, organic, whole grains, and meat. It was mostly what they ate prior to going to college. Well, you go to college, now you're broke and you're just trying to survive. So you know, lots of ramen, cup of noodles. And
When you said organic just a moment ago, does that mean like organic fruits and vegetables?
I assume so.
Okay.
She didn't say. The organic, whole grains, and meat was like a quote
Okay.
from what she had said. But I assume that's that direction. And then shortly after that, going to college and like changing her diet to eating like super garbage, terrible skin conditions, stuff that wouldn't clear up. As she went on and ended up doing her own version of an elimination diet, it kind of got smaller and smaller and smaller to, oh, what if I just eat meat? And because I don't feel bad when I eat meat. And it got that linear, and she played with it back and forth. And that's kind of how she landed on the carnivore diet. Right. So for her, she only eats beef and lamb with a little bit of salt. That is it.
And that's nothing glorious there.
Nope. Especially in our culture or our country where we have so many different cultures and different food cultures and so many different options and experiences go visit and explore through your mouth. I just shut myself off to that entire world because I am eating beef and lamb with nothing else.
Do you know why she landed on beef and lamb and not fish and eggs and chicken?
She didn't get into that. But it's just interesting to kind of see like her, and she showed kind of like her progress pictures, and she's like, I feel fucking great now. And I've tried, like, even when I go out, like when I took a trip to Florida, I was that person, and I'm like, you have to super scrub the grill down because I'm allergic to these 6 things. And she's like, I just said those things because I knew it would be what they needed to do to scrub down the grill. Well, they did scrub down the grill, but it wasn't enough, and she got super sick from being re-exposed to all this stuff.
Wow.
I was like, damn, like, but it was interesting. Like, it was a cool story to hear of you had shitty experience from an early age on all these things. And then you found a diet that's so restrictive, but now it's kind of trendy, that really has changed your life. And now you've got energy, your skin is clear, and you feel fucking fantastic. No more depression. And then once she figured out that, she's like, someone who's been depressed for years, you don't necessarily feel better, but you can just feel that the depression's gone. As soon as I knew that, I stuck with it, and then got my dad on it, got my mom on it, and they had the same response after a while of being on it. I was like, well, shit. Which leads me to believe the gut biome and mental health are perfectly intertwined. And there's several books out there that, lead, point in that direction. I just don't think we fully understand it yet.
That's a great link there. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, you can't argue with that. If she feels better, she should continue doing what she's doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same way for anybody who's vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian, whatever it is. Like, if you found what works for you, then I think everybody should be entitled to stick to that.
Right.
And at that point, it's about getting the most ethical, nutritious source of that specific food that you can find.
Yeah. And then I think once you find that, then you look at, sustainability questions and how do we make this more efficient without, pumping our food full of chemicals to make more of it.
100%. And we started in the root episode about nutrition and diet, talking about how complex diet and nutrition is. And this is just an example of it, but with Michaela's scenario where she eats, you said beef and lamb?
I think so.
Exclusively? Yeah. Is it the actual foods, or was it that maybe she needs to get that amount of protein? Or what other macro or micronutrient is in those 2 foods? Maybe she could, like, let's say she's getting 160 grams of protein every day. Maybe she needs that. If she ate like vegetarian diet, but still got her 160 grams, maybe she would still feel just as good. And it's not so much that the other foods are bad for her, but she just needed extra whatever nutrient it is or vitamin. I don't know. This is just kind of like speculating here, but it shows you how complex nutrition can be and why I think there are so many conflicting ideas that are circulating today.
Yeah, and then of course you
add in the microbiome.
Well,
gut biome. It's crazy.
The smart minds who've actually studied and know on a deep, intricate level the stuff we're bullshitting it about at a high level that we kind of have no clue about.
Kind of.
Welcome to Modern Day Apocrypha, where we talk about shit we're not qualified to.
It's a great world.
Yeah, it's great. And then it's hard because then you get the lobbyist aspect of there. You've got 2, we'll just take 2 individuals, Dr. A and Dr. B, who should have the same type of credentials and understanding of said topic. Dr. A has somebody in his pocket saying, hey, I need to sell more of X. So I need you to find me a study or fudge a study that we can put your credentials behind to say this is whatever.
Yes. So now we came full circle. Purdue Pharma with the OxyContin stuff. The doctors are signing off, moving this product like the dealer and hustlers they are.
Yeah. And then you got the other guy who understands the same thing, but no one's paying him, so he's trying to go tell the truth. And now he looks crazy. And it's like, well, who the fuck do you believe?
Right.
Because in 20, 40 years, we'll probably get the declassified documents that A was being paid off, but he's dead now, so it doesn't matter. Look over here at our new thing we're trying to sell. It's not all that, but there's so many of those that you're going, fuck. I don't know.
You know, I think a lot of this kind of closing conversation that we're having here stems from the availability of information that came with the internet. Because what it did was it completely disrupted any sense of authority that anybody had, because everybody, you and me, have a voice here. And, you know, I'm sure people can interpret what we're saying the wrong way. And I think we do a better job than most who have a public face in saying that we're not qualified on said subject. And still, I think people can misinterpret that. When you have, we'll go to the food pyramid again, completely just falling apart. Like, I don't even know what happened to that. Like, it just, nobody talks about that anymore because somebody or everybody was like, that's some bullshit. I don't know where that comes from, but there's a lack of authority and too many competing ideas. And it's a good and a bad thing because it exposes a lot of the shit authority that we've had in the past, but it also gives a lot of uneducated voices to throw into the mix, and you have to weed through all of that.
Well, and I feel like it's a different type of taking advantage of people, because now you know that old voice that was the only voice got exposed as being inaccurate. Now I have fear fueling me to everything else that's out there. Well, now I'm not going to think straight about diet A or book B. I'm just going to click it out of fear and go, this has to be. And then when that doesn't work for you, you throw it away into that other box and you add more fear to your previous fear. So you grab the next thing even more desperately, unless you recognize that cycle and that pattern you're building to stop and go, okay, what the fuck is going on? And I don't think that a lot of people have time for that. Maybe they'll catch it in one area of their life or existence, but to try to catch it on them all, on our fast-paced fucking world, good luck, man.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck. That's why we're here, to bring you the facts. And for 1995...
Yeah. Billy Mays here, but wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. There is more. There will be another episode next week. I don't know what we're talking about. We'll figure it out then. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Godspeed.